Good afternoon. This is Dr. David back with another episode of Fresh Start with Dr. David. I'm so glad to be here with you today. It's Saturday. I'm done seeing clients for the day. And it's funny. I learned so much from each person who comes to my office, whether they're a current client, whether it's a referral from someone else, from a psychiatrist or psychologist, or a past client, or, someone who just comes in for a discovery appointment, finds me online or whatever. But I learned so much from the people who come into my office. And I think it's so nice and refreshing that you can learn from people on a daily basis. So that's one of the reasons why I love what I do. I learn from each and every person who comes into my office, regardless of the reason. And it's an opportunity for me to grow and to grow the methods and techniques that I use in my office. As you may or may not know, I use a lot of outside the box techniques compared to a lot of MDs. Even though I don't practice medicine and I don't practice psychiatry, I use a lot of principles that are based upon some of those subjects. And I kind of incorporate a lot of different things that I've learned. I use hypnosis, as you know, hypnotherapy, guided meditation, NLP. I'm also a huge believer in the Sedona method. But I believe in a lot of techniques that kind of soften things, because I think in a lot of ways, life hasn't been soft, it's been hard. And when people have been traumatized, it's something hard. And so you don't make something that's hard softer with another hard thing. You use softness. And kind of my approach to things is to provide an environment where people can make changes, right? Kind of like, I love this analogy, but it's kind of like if you're making a stew and you've got a tougher piece of meat and you've got some vegetables and things like that, you let it simmer and let it soak and things like that. And you let the meat become tender. So that's kind of what I feel like I do in helping a lot of my clients heal, is I help the environment mentally and emotionally become more tender so that they can absorb things and make changes, right? And heat typically allows that to happen. So that's kind of how I look at it. And anyway, happy Valentine's Day, or as I call it, Singles Awareness Day. I've been saying that for years, SAD, Singles Awareness Day, as opposed to seasonal affective disorder, which is basically winter depression. But, Singles Awareness Day is kind of a play off of seasonal affective disorder anyway. But anyway, happy Valentine's Day to my mom, Dr. Betty Wright. Happy Valentine's Day to all the moms out there, all the sisters out there, all the spouses out there. Love should be celebrated in our culture. Love should be celebrated and embraced and enhanced in relationships. And so I love the thought of Valentine's Day and showing people that you care and that you love them. So anyway, happy Valentine's Day to everyone out there, regardless of whether you're in a relationship with yourself or you're single or you're in a relationship with someone else or you're married or whatever. It's a good time to embrace the love and the relationships that you do hold dear. So happy Valentine's Day to everyone. And as you know, President's Day is upcoming on Monday. And this particular year, I'm not really going to touch that subject. All that I will say is I appreciate the wisdom and good decisions of the presidents that we've had up until the present time. Each and every one of them, for good, for bad, for worse. Nobody's perfect. Everybody has some redeeming quality, although some have fewer than others. But I'd like to say thank you and appreciate every single president we've had for the positive contributions that they've made to our country. And I'd also, like to suggest that people take elections seriously and voting seriously, because it does matter. So with that, I'm not going to mess with President's Day anymore. And I'm going to move on to today's topic. So this is a really, really important topic. And I have covered this before, but as you know, if you're a regular listener to my podcast, I frequently return to the same topics over and over because I think that things are interconnected. And I like to realize the connections between things. And I think the more that you learn, the more knowledge you acquire, the more that you think and contemplate things, the more that you're likely to make good connections between things that are related, interrelated, maybe don't even seem related, but matter, right? If it matters, then it's probably related to something. And I've previously talked about this topic and surrounding topics with an expert on grief and bereavement, Mr. Gary Scott, who I will try to tag when I share this online. But if you don't know, you should definitely check him out. He's on Facebook. He's listed as a Facebook friend of mine. His name is Gary Scott, and he has a podcast called What If You Could with Gary Scott. And it's a really, really good podcast. I like to listen to it. He approaches a lot of different topics from a lot of different angles. But Gary is an expert in grief and bereavement and loss. And I love that because that's one thing that's central to every human experience is the feeling or the experience of a loss. We all lose something, whether it's a dream, a feeling, a person, a relationship, in some cases, our minds, some cases, the use of certain parts of our bodies if we have a stroke. But part of human existence and human experience is learning to move forward, even though you've lost something. Because, in my opinion, for everything that you lose, there's something to be gained. That's my belief. But that's why I think it's really, really important. And part of what I think determines or helps determine your level of happiness and abundance and, you know, sound mindedness and things like that is your ability to handle losses, whether it's not getting something you want, that you wanted for a long time, or something that you perceive that you have that's no longer there. And that's why I love the work that Gary does. So if you haven't done so already, be sure to check out Gary Scott's podcast, What If You Could with Gary Scott. And you could also find him on Facebook. If you visit my page, then you'll also see him. And I think he's also in one of my groups, but Gary is an expert on grief, bereavement, and loss. And that's the topic of today's podcast. Here's my thing. I'm a strong believer that things are interrelated, interconnected, things like that. And I think you can apply one principle to another and get a lot of creativity and success. You can find novel solutions to problems if you use the application of one principle in one arena to another, right? Kind of how like you could apply business practices to your family life and how you could apply practices that have worked in your family and relationships within your family to business relationships and vice versa. You can apply things that you use as a chef or in the kitchen to things that you do in your office, right? Organization, management, keeping track of things, monitoring, all those kind of things. So there's some universal things that we can apply to everything. And I think that's especially true when you talk about grief and loss. And I came up with a theory. So one of the things, if you know me, you know what I like to do. I love to create things. I love to gain knowledge and experience things, but I also like to use that as a catalyst to create things. And I created something. I call it QAA and QAT, right? And that stands for quadruple A therapy and the quadruple A approach. One of the things that I've learned from looking at grief and the work of people like Gary Scott and Dr. Kubler-Ross, who's an expert on grief and bereavement and things like that, is a pattern, right? So part of what we do as humans is we learn patterns, but we also should, over time, become better at identifying them. In my opinion, if you're dealing with something in your life, whether it's the loss of something, whether it's an adjustment, whether it's a change, your marriage status has changed, your financial status has changed, your relationship with your child has changed, your relationship with your best friends have changed, your relationship with your body has changed. That's called illness, right? That you have to accept. Whatever it is, there's a process that I think that I've created that helps you to start to move beyond that. And I call it QAA, right? The quadruple A approach or the quadruple A therapy or quadruple A technique. But it's basically incorporating four things into the process that you use to work through something. The first one, it's so easy to remember, because that's why it's called QAA, right? Or QAs, quadruple A's, right? As opposed to triple A that you call when your car is messed up. QA is what you use when your feelings or your mind or your mindset are messed up. And those A's stand for awareness, acknowledgement, acceptance, and agreement, right? Those are some of the stages of grief that people go through, right? And there's a couple that I added in. So as you may have seen on the previous podcast that I did, the one that I did with Gary Scott, and then some others that I've done too. When I talk about grief, one of the big things that they talk about in grief is acceptance. But one of my kind of realizations in working with my clients and just kind of studying this topic too is a lot of people think they're in the acceptance stage when they're not. They're in the awareness stage, or maybe they're not even to the acknowledgement stage. You have to get to those two stages before you can accept and agree to make a change and move forward, right? So that's what this is all about. Awareness is number one. Number one, you have to be aware of something, right? And sometimes a certain level of objectivity is required to do that. That's why you might go to somebody else to help you solve a problem, because they can be objective about something and have an awareness of variables that you cannot see. We call those blind spots, right? Everybody has blind spots. I have blind spots. That's why I go to my friends or whoever I go to for advice or help or therapy or whatever. But everybody has blind spots. And so one of the ways that you move from something being a blind spot for you, right? Just like when you're in your car and a panel in your car, something blocks a spot where you might see a car. In order to gain awareness of that, you need some level of objectivity. And other people can help that, but you've got to have an awareness of something. So if you don't know that or realize that something exists, then it's also very difficult to deal with it because you don't even realize it exists, right? So you have to become aware of it. The next thing that you have to do is you have to acknowledge it, right? And a lot of times that means not just in your mind, but out loud. That's a big part of the process, acknowledging that something is a fact, that it's true of you, you know, saying it out loud. And if you look at things like AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, or NA, groups like that, part of their 12 steps is that process of acknowledgement, not just being aware that something's the case, but acknowledging it verbally, saying it out loud. I am an addict. I'm an alcoholic. I am imperfect. I am a sinner, whatever it is. And, the thing about it is they use similar things like that in church, where you basically make a testament. You give a testament. So attesting is also a part of it. A knowledge, you could call it acknowledgement, you could call it attestation or attesting, but basically saying out loud or acknowledging out loud that something is the case, especially if it's something that you have struggled with or you've had a blind spot for, or something you need to work through that might be challenging, right? Part of what you've got to do is also accept it, right? And that acceptance goes much deeper than the previous A. So every single A goes deeper than the previous A, right? And so there are levels to this. It goes deeper and deeper. And the deeper and deeper that you get into your inner self and the core foundations of what the problem is and your personality surrounding it, the more you are likely to be successful in solving it. But acceptance has to be there. And that's after you've moved past awareness and acknowledgement. Acceptance is more than acknowledgement. That's why it's a different word. Acknowledging is saying something out loud. Accepting it is saying, this is here and this is what it's done to me personally or professionally, right? So you can acknowledge that you're an alcoholic, but until you accept it, you might say, you know what? My alcoholism is ruining my relationships. It's ruining my business. It's ruining my motivation. It's ruining my body. It's negatively impacting my mind and everything else. So part of acceptance is acknowledging not just that something is true, but how it negatively impacts you and why you need to move past it, right? Then you need to also, in my opinion, have an agreement. That's an agreement that you've made that not only have I accepted this, but I desire and will commit to, and I'm dedicated to moving forward. The agreement part requires commitment and dedication, right? And that's why it's so hard. A lot of people don't move past acceptance into agreement because they don't want to commit to doing something or being different in their behaviors or their thoughts. They don't want to dedicate to that, right? If I wanted to, I could add another A to it and have it 5 A's, right? That would be penta instead of quadruple, penta A, approach. And I could add appreciation. And you could add that one in because I think it's helpful to appreciate it because whatever you do right now was a part of you in your development, in your story, in your journey, in your evolution, a solution to something. And appreciating that a part of you attempted to overcome a challenge, even if it was imperfect, is a good thing, right? Regardless of whether what it is, right? Hopefully, the older that we get, the wiser that we get, and the more that we realize that, you know, a lot of things don't happen by accident. We adapt, and maybe some of the adoptions that we've made or adaptations that we've made younger in life weren't the best ones. But as we get older, we can change those adaptations. If you're a certain age, you might need a teddy bear or something else in order to feel safe or secure or whatever. As an adult, you may not use a teddy bear, you might use food or alcohol or something else. But you should appreciate the part of you that imperfectly tried to come up with a solution because it did try. It did something in your best interests. That was the intent, even though it didn't work out that way, right? So those A's are really, really important to know, to be aware of, and to work through. Awareness, acknowledgement, acceptance, agreement, and then even appreciation, I think, is a good one because that adds a sense of self-love and self-care for the part of you that actually tried to deal with the situation, even though it may not have done the best job, right? And like I said, acknowledgement is also kind of a form of attesting, right? And that's why I think that religion and spirituality are so important because they incorporate attesting, saying things out loud like, I am a sinner, I did wrong, I confess. It's helpful because it's hard to move past something if you can't even acknowledge it. And so what I want you to take from this episode is using those things. But here's the thing. You don't just apply it to grief. You can apply it to anything. You could apply it to your relationships. You could apply it to a problem. You can apply it to a challenge. Anything. It doesn't have to be loss or grief. You can apply this QAA or PAA, as I've changed it slightly, to anything. But it's important that you incorporate those steps. And if you do them on a religious or regular basis, it's going to make a big difference in your life, whether it's in church or synagogue or temple or mosque or at AA meetings or whatever. Those kind of things are going to make a big difference. One other thing I'd like to touch on before I wrap up this episode, which is going twice as long as I try to go, but that's okay. 20 minutes isn't bad. But is this, when you think of what you'd like to achieve, right? Or what you want, right? Want and achieve, right? Think about the words that you use, right? Think about the word desire. That means you want something, right? You have an impulse to achieve something, right? Think about the word commitment. Think about the word dedication. My last episode was about commitment. But it also is a little bit deeper than I went on that episode, which I may revisit in another episode. But here's the thing. Part of the reason why in my last episode, I talked about focusing on what you can commit to, not just what you desire, is the notion of dedication, right? A lot of people say that they're committed to things, but they're not dedicated. So there are levels of which or deeper levels of which you're more likely to achieve something. There's wanting something or desiring, then there's being committed to it, then there's being dedicated, then there's being accountable for it, or passionate about it, or devoted to it. There are all these different levels of things. So think about the things that you say that you desire or want, and ask yourself those questions. If I want to double my income, if I want to start a positive relationship or a romantic relationship, if I want to start a small business, if I want to improve my diet and lose weight, am I committed to it? Am I dedicated to it? Will I become accountable for it, for the results that I want? Am I passionate about it? Am I devoted to it? Right? And I think those things, if you start asking yourself those questions, you're going to come up with a lot of better solutions, especially if, for instance, your goals are like mine is, to lose a few pounds, to get in better shape, to be kinder to your body, things like that. It's a big difference between saying, I want to lose 30 pounds or I want to lose 40 pounds and actually being committed to it, being dedicated to it, being accountable to it, being passionate or devoted. In my book, The Nutrient Diet, one of the reasons why I take the approach to eating and lifestyle choices that I do, i.e., picking the vegetables that are your favorite vegetables and choosing those on a regular basis, or your favorite fishes or your favorite dishes, having pride in the things that you create in your own kitchen, is because that helps build passion and devotion. It's part of your culture. It's a part of your lifestyle. So that's why I believe that you should take an approach where you actually desire the things that are good for you, right? For me, it's asparagus and broccoli, maybe filet mignon, maybe chicken stuffed with this, or maybe an Italian dish or an Asian dish, maybe baked fish, those kind of things. But you should become passionate about positive choices. It makes it so much easier to stick to it, right? Because it's kind of hard to become passionate about rice cakes. It is. Rice cakes are hard to become passionate about. But if you want to become passionate about halibut or orange roughy or, strawberry grouper or, different types of fishes and how they taste and things like that, a culinary experience, then it's a totally different thing. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. If you haven't done so already, definitely subscribe to this podcast, listen to past episodes that I've done, especially the last one about the subject matter of commitment, and just realize your part of your commitment is whether you're truly dedicated to something or not. And if you can add accountability, passion, and devotion to it, you're more likely to remain truly committed to it. And then also check out Gary Scott's podcast, What If You Could? I promise you will learn something. If you have a self-improvement or mental health and wellness goal that you'd like to achieve this year, contact my office, Atlanta Holistic Mental Health and Wellness, with offices conveniently located in the burbs, Sandy Springs, Roswell area, and then also in Buckhead, with the main office being in Sandy Springs, Roswell, right at the border of where Roswell and Sandy Springs meet. But schedule an appointment with us. Go online to the website, www.ahmhw.com. That's www.a as in apple, H as in holistic, M as in mental, H as in health, and W is in wellness or web.com, www.ahmhw.com. And from there, you can read some of the articles that we have about tips and things to help your self-improvement, self-development goals, also mental health tips and things like that. And then you can also schedule an appointment there. And with that, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Fresh Start with Dr. David. Take care. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.